So one of the first things I want to do here is make sure I'm painting what I think I'm painting. So to get this across, we're gonna, on this color base here, I'm going to paint sort of just a really rough sort of color for each element. Bring it back into Maya, and we're gonna make sure that wood is the wood, you know, if I think this is wood or iron, that I'm painting it as such. So I think this part right here, all these pieces, I want to be wood. Make sure I didn't over. Okay, that looks okay. So there's that. Let's go into our other one here. And I'm pretty sure that this down here is going to be our iron for the rim, and this guy is going to be the lashings. Just make those like a dark leather. I think that would be cool. There we go. I'm going to hide the UVs on each one of these and save it out. So what I'll do is I'll do a save as, and this is going to be our wagon wheel, and we're going to call this first one color, and we want to save it as a flat. I'm going to go ahead and use a JPEG for this one, and we'll just say save. Okay, and let's do our base. Now I just realized I did something wrong here. These are not my lashings. I'm missing my lashings actually. I have a mistake. We have to find out where our lashings are, because those are the wood poles. Let's see if I can find out what I did with my lashings. Aha, those are the lashings. All right, that's right, because this is. Aha. Okay, so this guy right here, that is my rim, and those are my lashings. So I'm already, before I even do my first pass here, I'm making mistakes, but that's okay. That's our lashing, which I wanted to make a dark leather, right? There we go. And then this guy here, I need to switch this texture as, this is going to be the base for our iron. Okay, so now let's go ahead and save that out as wagon wheel, JPEG, color, right? Just select it, adopts that name. Yes, replace. And now we'll do this guy. Get the same color there. There we go. And just go ahead and save this as the wagon basket. And we want to switch text, texture, call it color, and JPEG. Great, save as. Cool, so we've saved out the color, a basic color texture, just real quick. Didn't really do too much because I want to make sure that I'm painting what I think I'm painting. So I'll come back into our wagon, and now we're going to assign the texture to each of these. And let's go ahead and close that up and close this up. And let's go open our Hypershade. Go graph, let's go ahead and, so here we go, here's the Hypershade. I'm going to go ahead and generate some new textures here. So you probably have already done this. So if you haven't, then we'll just do it right now. I'm going to grab, let's look at our wagon wheels. Let's hide that. Let's grab wheel 1, wheel 2. Let's go ahead and isolate them, kind of work on these guys for a second. I'm going to select the geometry in my viewport like that, so I just have the geometry selected. Then I'm going to come over here and I have my little blend. So I'm going to right click over the blend and say assign material to viewport selection. And that should have done it, right? So let's just check that. We'll grab this. Yep, it responds to my color changes. So we'll make this a little smaller for us. More Hypershade. And now we can start to mess with this shader just for the wagon wheels. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a name, wagon wheel underscore blend. That way I know that I'm working with a blend. And it's a wagon wheel. So to get the texture loaded, this is the color channel for the blend. You can see it here in the material viewer on the Hypershade. Also, if I select this geometry and I go to my attribute editor, you'll notice that it has the shape node, which is for the geo, but this is the blend that's now been plugged into it. So you can also access the shader right here from the attribute editor, which might be a little more convenient than having this big window open and kind of in your way. So sometimes once I assign the shader, I just kind of close my Hypershade window and I just want to work here for a minute. So I can select the color channel and that will open up this, oh, you want to create a render node? Yes, please. And underneath the 2D texture pad options here, you have a file. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on file. And this changed color because it now has a file image plugged into it, but we actually haven't said what file to use. So underneath this file node, I'll click on the navigate, and let's go ahead and navigate to our intro to Maya, week 5, textures, and I have my wagon wheel color right here. So go ahead and open that up and say assign, turn on my textures, and you'll see all the colors are assigned right where I want them. I have this wood separate right from the iron, and I have my iron rim, and the wood looks good. So it looks like I've got those textures done right, at least. So let's go ahead and see how we did on the oh dear, I didn't mean to do that. Let's go ahead and unisolate that one. Let's go to our basket group and arch group here, and we'll isolate those selected objects. I seem to have a texture on from previously. That is unintended. So let's look up our Hypershade. That's what I might just do inside the Hypershade. So let's go ahead and grab a new blend. Alright, so we'll call this one the wagon basket underscore blend. There we go. So now we have two textures. You see we have the wagon wheel blend and we have the wagon basket. Let's go ahead and grab all of these guys, right click, and we'll say assign material to viewport selection. So now this blend has been assigned. I'll grab the blend and just check, make sure. Doesn't seem to be responding, so let's try that again. Wagon basket. Interesting. For some reason, oh, there we go. Yeah, when I had texture turned on, for some reason it wasn't responding to this. It should be. So that's a little bug, I think. So if I have textures turned off, and now I grab my wagon basket blend, it does respond. So beware, maybe a little bug on your computer too. Nevertheless, we can still continue to do what we want to do, which is go ahead. I'm going to do this in the hypershade this time. So in the color channel, I'm going to select this little black and white checkered. On my other screen pops open my render node. So let's see, create render node. Yes, file underneath the 2D textures, right? There's that file node. So now a file has been assigned, but a file node has been assigned. So if you look at our network, you have here's our blend, here's a file, and here's a 2D placement node. The 2D placement node basically says how do you want this to be assigned to your, how do you want this file to be assigned to your shader. And as you can see, you have things like I can repeat the UVs multiple times, I can offset them. You have a lot of options. You can even rotate the texture, right? So that does come very handy and important, especially when you start using tileable textures. In this instance, the basic default, the repeat of 1-to-1 is exactly what we need. So we'll go ahead and grab our file node here, and I'll go ahead and let's navigate to the file we want. And for this one, we have the wagon basket color, and say OK. Let's turn on our textures and see. It looks like everything came in just how we wanted it. Cool. So now we have these colors are being driven by the textures that we painted inside of Photoshop. And as you can see, using your, maximize this for a second, using your hypershade as a way to look at your files. So you can now see I have wagon blend up here, and right click and refresh swatch. That way it shows me a little ball. So there's my wagon. Let's go make these a little bigger. I have my wagon basket blend, and I have my wagon wheel blend. And those are two shaders in my scene now. If I select them, I can even hold Shift Select, and I can say Graph Materials. Add selected to graph. So now here's my wagon wheel, here's my wagon basket. If I select these two, and I can say show me the inputs and outputs. So I can say graph the input and output connections. Now I see all the input and outputs for that selected blend material. Wagon basket, right? And so far all we have is a color channel going in. So now that we know we have this correct, let's go ahead and go back into Photoshop and let's generate some more complex texture so we actually get a wood grain, but also let's start building our, we're going to build some bump and some speck channels as well.